Today we're going to talk about money and stuff, and we're going to start off with a bit of a game. It might take some vulnerability. You're going to have a chance to kind of share some comments in the feed if you feel comfortable with that, or at least in your group of family or friends, and you're watching now, you're going to be able to share some information, but it's going to be useful as we go on this journey. So, this is going to take some imagination in your mind. I want you to go to the place where you store your stuff. Maybe it's a garage, an attic, basement. Maybe you have a storage facility and you don't have to get up and get there. That's okay. Just mentally. So you're looking at it, your garage, your storage unit, wherever it is, and you're walking in and you're digging. You're digging to the very back of that storage space where you store your stuff. Now, you've got to the back mentally. Think about what's at the very back. What 3 things are there? Go ahead, write them down. As you think about it, try to imagine, try to be there. What 3 things? Tell everyone, hey, this is where I store my stuff, and I went to the very back, and these 3 things are there. Now, go ahead and ask yourself this question. Why do I still have these 3 items? Why do I still have these 3 items? Because maybe they're things that you've never seen in a long time. Maybe you moved them from another location, another place where you used to live, and you just put them back there. Or maybe you only use them once a year. Maybe you haven't used them in 5 years. Whatever it is, what those 3 things, why do you have them? Why do you keep them? And now here's another question too. Why are they important? We've been going through a series called The Lies and Truth About You. The lies and truth about you and me living in this Western culture. I've been using this book by Daniel M., You Are What You Do, and 6 other lies about work, life, and love. And in this series, we've been tackling 7 lies that the world tells us and the 7 biblical truths that God tells us that refute these lies. Now, if you've missed any previous episodes, it's okay. You can pause this video. You can go back and go to our website, go to YouTube, wherever you need to go. If you do go to our website, you're going to click the Church on Demand button, and there's lots of options there to watch previous episodes so that you can be kind of right in line with what we're going to talk about today. And as we do this, today, what we're going to tackle is the lie, you are what you own. The world telling you that you need to build wealth, you need to build possessions, and the more stuff you have, the more value and pleasure you have in your life. And we don't like the sound of that, but if we're to be honest, in Western culture, it's a thing we deal with. And we're going to see that in the Bible, God pushes against that and says, you are not what you own. And we're going to use 2 source materials today. First, we're going to look at the Bible, specifically the book of Matthew, Matthew 6. And then we're also going to look at chapter 5 of Daniel's book. We're going to read a little bit from that called Hoarders Are Us. Now, you might even hear that title and be like, wait, I'm not a hoarder. If we live in the Western world, we keep a lot of stuff we don't need. And we're going to get into it today. But to start things out, to start attacking this lie, to get out of the gate and say, hey, we are not what we own, we're going to look to something Jesus taught in the first century. We're going to go to the book of Matthew. The book of Matthew. If you're unfamiliar with looking things up in the Bible and you have a print version, there's always a table of contents in the front. You can find Matthew. Go to Matthew, and we're going to actually go to Matthew 6. Matthew chapter 6. And if you have a mobile device, you can actually download a Bible app, and you can just write in Matthew 6, and you'll get there. Today we're going to read Matthew 6, verses 19 to 24. Matthew 6, verses 19 to 24. Here's what Jesus said. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is the lamp of the body. So, if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. Now we need to understand that in the ancient world, the first century, as well as, to be honest, the developing world in our current time, all goods have value. Physical items that can be sold, that can be used, they have great value. They're treasures. If you had lots of possessions, you were wealthy. Things like livestock, very, very important. Different things that you could use to build stuff, to make things. That's very important, these tools. Or if you actually had valued items, things like perfumes and other valuable goods like pottery and these types of things in the ancient world were so important. They had value. If you were in a jam, you could sell them, and there were people in the ancient world that would store up treasures. You'd need big spaces to store all your treasure, as well as just physical money. They didn't have things like stocks and Bitcoin and everything else we got now. It was real tangible money like coins, gold, silver, precious metal, jewels, these types of things that you could hold tangible, and you need to store them somewhere. And this is how life was. This is what the world that Jesus spoke into at that time. And this is why Jesus' teaching on the eye makes sense. Because in their world, they're not living in a virtual world, a digital world. They don't have a banking app where you can kind of see how much money you're accumulating or see how your stocks are doing. It's not like that. In the first century, you're actually looking at your treasure. It's physically there, and you're storing it or you're locking it up somewhere. You're making sure it's protected from where moths could destroy it if it's clothing or things that could be destroyed in that way, those kind of materials, or things that could just decay and fall apart, maybe like potteries and different things like that, or they could be stolen by robbers, by thieves, physical things. And so the eye had to be watching it at all times. You got to keep an eye on your stuff. And this is what Jesus is talking about. But now let's talk about us, because we do store up a lot of stuff. We do store up a lot of money, and checking that bank balance all the time, checking those stocks and how the investments are doing, that's also relevant. That's what Jesus is talking about. Like, you got to keep your eye on it. You got to check things. That's part of it too. But what he's saying here when he talks about you cannot serve two masters, when he talks about the end of this passage, it's like, well, wait a second, two masters? Is this slavery? Yeah, that's what Jesus is getting to. Your treasure, whether it be in the first century ancient world, the developing world, or in our current Western culture, gathering it up in places or having tabs on it, that enslaves us. We are serving a master of money and stuff, making sure that it's all together, that it's all there. Our treasure becomes our master, and we become its slave. And you want to push against that. I got it. I get it. That's like, come on, this seems really over the top. But pause for a moment. Think about it. Think about what you own. Think about the money you have. Think about how often you think about it. You got to know what's going on with it. That's when you can start to see, okay, wait a second. Is there a chain attached to this a little bit? Am I so worried about my stuff? Maybe it has become a master. How? Where do we go with this? How does this really consume us? How does it really become a master? How does it start? Well, it's all in our mind. It's our mental picture of things. Either our desire for it, because maybe we really don't have much. That's a thing. Maybe we don't have much, and we're always looking at what the next guy has, possessions, money. You want more, the next promotion, and your mind is focused on it. That's kind of how the slavery begins. You want that next toy. You want that next piece of clothing, that next thing for your home, next pile of money, whatever it is. And it's the desire. It's the mental. It's like chaining you up. Or you get to the point where you just start buying it and you start accumulating debt. Same thing. Debt is a bondage. It's like the desire starts the bondage, and then it leads to debt. But maybe you're filthy rich. You just have more money than you know what to do with, and you just buy stuff, accumulate, grow the bank balance, grow the bank balance. It's like retirement's coming. I'm gonna be footloose and fancy free, but that's still bondage. You're bondage now to your future, or you're in bondage to the next experience you can buy or the thing that you can buy. That doesn't end either. The desire or the debt enslaves us. Now, we're going to get into some deeper stuff, specifically about the things we own, possessions. We're going to leave money for a moment, but I just want to say that we did a big series this past year called Dollars and Cents, looking at the book of Proverbs and going through a bunch of the proverbial wisdom that Solomon gave specifically related to money. Again, the series is Dollars and Cents, and you can go to mountainviewwhitehorse.ca/church-on-demand. And if you want to dive deeper into the money stuff, check out that series, and you will see everything you need to, or you can listen to it or watch it, and you'll get great insight into the money part. But for today, I want to talk specifically about our possessions, okay? We're going to talk about our possessions. Where do we hide our treasure? Where do we hide or store our treasure? At the start, we did our little game, right? Where we're going into the garage, the attic, the basement, the storage unit, trying to think, okay, what's back there again? What would be back there? And we're trying to think through it like, yeah, why do I have that? Why do I need that thing? Why do I treasure that? Why do I keep it? Okay, we already went there in that little game at the start, but I want to give you some statistics because you're not the only one that's storing up a ton of stuff. In fact, Canadians and Americans, Western world as a whole, have a massive problem with storing up stuff. Check this out. According to Boxby Urban Storage, they say that 65% of self-storage renters have a garage in their home, 47% have an attic, and 33% have a basement. Isn't that hilarious? So that means they have capacity. Many people that have self-storage units have the capacity to store stuff in their homes, but that's either full up or used in some other way, and so they need extra room outside of where they live to rent to store their stuff. Many of it not always accessed. Maybe that's you. You're starting to wonder, why do I have that stuff? That makes sense. Yeah, my attic's full, my basement's full. Well, check this out. According to CBC Business, they did a huge report on the self-storage industry. And there's a great article, Storage Businesses Booming as Canadians Grapple with, quote, too much stuff. We Canadians have lots and lots of stuff. And so they did the research on this self-storage business. It's great. It's a great business to get into, and it's very lucrative. But why? This is what they wanted to know. Why is it so lucrative? And so they talked to owners and property managers of these self-storage facilities, and they actually replied, there's an industry thing called, that they stated, the demand for storage is driven by the 6 Ds. Demand for storage is driven by the 6 Ds. And these 6 Ds, words that start with D, are in the industry kind of the reasons that they hear of most often why people get self-storage. Now, as I looked into this cultural moment and I learned more about it, I realized that we can actually think about what Jesus says about storing up treasures on this earth, and we can actually look at it through the lens of this Canadian problem, these 6 Ds, these 6 reasons why we store so much stuff, or what the catalyst is, what the beginning of it is, and we can actually learn something very, very important about maybe our problem with hoarding, maybe Western world's problem with hoarding overall. So the first demand for storage in Canadian culture is related to something called downsizing. This isn't a big item. It's not like a big shocker for you that downsizing is important. But downsizing is the point where someone actually has a moment of reality and they look at all the stuff they have and they're like, we need to downsize. We need to move into a smaller place, or we're forced maybe into a smaller place, or we've just got too much. We got to shrink it down. But what's important is this downsizing is all based on where they live. They downsize where they live, and they need to take all that stuff because they don't want to let go of it, and they need to move it to a self-storage facility. So we downsize our life so we feel good about ourselves, like, okay, we got rid of all this junk out of our life, but we didn't really. We just stored it up into a different place. And so, again, if we look at it through the light of what Jesus teaches about our treasures on earth, our possessions on earth, what does Jesus say? What would he say to this in downsizing? Don't move it to self-storage. Let it go. Let it go. And we say that. We're like, we're going to sell it. I'm going to save it to sell it. And I get this too. I'm the same way. I'll eventually sell it. It's valuable. It's worth some money. I don't want to just throw it away. Or why not? Why not? Oh, because of the landfill. Okay, give it away. You can go on Facebook Buy and Sell or Kijiji right now. Just put pictures of your stuff and just say free, come get it. People will come out of the woodwork because there's Canadians that have tons of stuff that'll come have your stuff. Now, I'm not saying maybe it perpetuates the problem, but again, we need to focus as individuals. For you in your life, for me in my life, I got to say, okay, Jesus, I'm listening to you. I'm storing up this stuff. I gotta let it go. And by letting it go, I can't just move it to renting a place. I can't move it into the garage and just store it up there. I need to actually let this go. Does this have to have so much value in my life? Do I got to keep this? Or can I actually say, you know what? If someone else needs this, come take it. It's okay. Yes, did I spend money on it? Yes, I did once upon a time, but I'm not using it. And it doesn't define me. I can let it go. Downsizing, let it go. Second problem that leads to overstorage is death. Death. This is the second biggest one. So this one's a little hard to deal with because it often involves a family member, a close friend, an important loved one, and they pass away and they have stuff. Some of our loved ones have tons of stuff. And then you face this difficult journey. And we faced this before in our own family when someone passes away and there's a juggling or there's a sensitive conversation that's always happening on what do you do with the things that loved one treasured and cherished. Because you feel bad that they don't have value to you because they were theirs, but that person has so much value to you, and so you're lost a little bit. Well, this is hard. Each person needs to pray through that and ask God to give them strength to let go of that stuff. I'm not going to tell you what to let go. Remember, it's not going to the kingdom with you. It's not going to heaven with you. So right now, if you're a senior and you're thinking about it and you have tons of stuff, I want you to understand the burden that it is for family members if you have a ton of stuff and you pass away and they're going to struggle letting go of it all because they love you so much that they're burdened to have to give it away, or they'll try to sell it, but then it won't get the value that you thought it was going to, or they might actually have to throw it out. It might go to the landfill or the recyclers, and it will burden them. So if you are an elderly person, if you have a lot of stuff, now's the moment that you look at what Jesus says and say, okay, I need to stop storing up this treasure. If I'm not using this and my children or grandchildren don't want it, I need to let it go so that when I pass away, I don't become a burden to them, so that their feelings and love for me doesn't get all mixed up with my stuff. And I know this is a sensitive issue. I get it. But if you've talked to anyone who's had a loved one pass away, it's a real problem. And this is why most of their stuff ends up in storage units. You start storing up the treasures of the people who have come before you. That's a problem. Let's talk about the third one. The third one is divorce. This is so difficult. And due to COVID restrictions, due to COVID and all this, people working in close proximity, divorces have actually increased in Canada, increased even here in our city in the Yukon. And so there's a real estate shortage. A lot of these smaller units are going really quick as there's more and more split homes. And it's a real tragic thing. And this isn't a message about divorce and marriage, although we talk about it here at Mountain View. And we've talked about it before. There's videos on that. We have counseling resources for you if you need a counselor. If you are and your spouse are struggling, we want to help. Please let us know if this is you. But one of the terrible things that happens is two people have lots of stuff, and when the relationship is broken, they don't want each other's stuff in their presence. And so a lot of times one doesn't have the room, or they both don't have the room when they leave the home, and it ends up in self-storage and it just sits there. We believe marriage is important and it's worth fighting for. And so we pray that whatever stuff's in storage right now, that it actually ends up back in your home if it is important and you become united again. And we want to help you with that. But if the relationship is done and things are stored up, again, this I think comes back to the downsizing thing. We can't hold on to the past, or we can't really grapple with the past unless we reconcile. And sometimes that stuff that's stored up might be actually wrapped up in the bitterness and the struggle and everything. And maybe one of the best things you can do is let it go and ask, why am I storing this up? Is this a part of the burden? And remember, it's the relationship, the person that's the most important. The stuff that they own, the stuff that you own together, that's not important. That won't go to heaven with you. And at the end of your life, all that stuff won't matter. Your relationship. So try your best to reconcile it. And if you're someone who knows a friend or family member who's going through divorce, separation, stuff like that, pray for them. Connect them with us so we can get them counseling options. We want to help, okay? So divorce, it's a real thing. It's a hard one. You got to really wrestle through the reconciliation. Okay, the next two I want to talk about kind of go together, displacement and disaster. Displacement and disaster, and this is when someone, either a natural disaster comes, which there's natural disasters that happen in different areas of the world for different reasons. We had kind of a minor one in Lake Labarge a week or two ago, where there's a massive windstorm, and I heard that some cabins got crushed and people's garages, different things like that. And so that's a minor scale. It happened in Labarge, but it happens in greater ways too. Or someone loses their job, the displacement part of it, displacement or disaster. If there's an economic crisis, a lot of times people get displaced. They have to move other places. They have to move to places where work is, and they've got stuff, and they don't have the money to maybe move it. And so in order to transport it, or maybe they don't have a permanent residence, there's all sorts of different reasons. It goes into self-storage. Now, what do we do in regards to what Jesus says? Okay, storing up treasure, building up treasure. How do we deal with this with displacement and disaster? This is where I think the Christian needs to come in and support. Maybe you have extra space, and some of these people's stuff, this is actually important. Like, this is their furniture. This is part of their livelihood. Maybe their tools they use. A lot of times, this isn't just the frivolous stuff. If you've been displaced or faced a disaster, there is nothing that causes you to check, okay, why do I need this more than that? A lot of times, this is important stuff. And we as Christians, if we hear about someone who's struggling, displaced because of finances or something's happened, if you know someone in Labarge that their place got crushed from a falling tree from the windstorm, this is where Christians need to be the first to say, hey, how can I help you store your stuff? Hey, can I hold on to it for a moment, and I'll make sure to keep it safe, keep it, from getting too cold or whatever it is. And so that once you get established again, then I can make sure it gets back to you, or maybe even transport it for them. A lot of times this isn't just about letting go, although it might be. This is where Christians actually come in and say, hey, we've got some room. Help us find room for you. And maybe we need to look at our storage space and say, why do I have this filled with my stuff when I could be using this to help someone who's displaced or faced a disaster? And we don't know what kind of displacement's coming next. We don't know when the COVID crisis is going to end. We don't know if we're going to have more lockdowns, restrictions. We don't know if people are going to lose their jobs. We don't know. There could be a natural disaster at any time. We might have an earthquake here again. We haven't had a big one at all in a long time, but it might happen and things might get wrecked. Whatever it may be, we as Christians, if we follow Jesus, this is a way that we can serve other people and say, hey, how can I help? Our last one is density. Now, density is something that happens predominantly with the immigrated population in Canada, with people coming from all different parts of the world. A lot of times they're trying to build income for themselves, cut out a living in life, but many of them are sending money back to their home countries and developing countries. And so a way that they can cut cost is a lot of times they live a couple families or a bigger family, or maybe they have grandma or grandpa live with them, or aunts and uncles, and they all live in the same house. And this is a density, more people living in a smaller space. And for them, some of the stuff they have is important. It's not frivolous. They've had to cut down. They've had to cut down in regard to actually moving to Canada and let go a lot of stuff, leave it at home, and they've created this new life, cut out this new life for themselves. And so again, each person, if this is you and you've arrived to Canada, you do need to look at your stuff and say, hey, do I need this? Am I storing up this treasure on earth instead of looking to the kingdom? But again, this is where the Christian can come in and say, hey, can we help here somehow? Maybe you've got a rental unit, you can provide maybe some housing for them, or you've got some storage space and you can say, hey, do you need to store something for a while until your family can get stable enough to get a bigger place? There's lots of ways that Christians can help in this regard if it's an important way to serve others. And all of this serving, whether it be for someone struggling with divorce or displacement or disaster, or just high density, trying to cut out a life for themselves and trying to cut costs. However a Christian helps, this is also that we can share the gospel, have the heart of Jesus, because ultimately serving those people in regards to stuff, in regards to possessions, we are actually building the kingdom. Because in that, they'll say, hey, why are you helping us? Why are you doing this? Why in amongst this chaos we're trying to deal with, do you reach out? And it has to do with sharing the gospel. As we close, maybe you're wondering, Jeremy, I get it. I get what Jesus is saying to me. I get that I got to let go of my stuff. I get that I've got too many possessions, or I put too much value on possessions. I'm obsessed with them. I get it. But how do I let go? What's the secret? How can I finally let go of this stuff? Well, for that, we're going to look also to the New Testament. We're going to go to Philippians 4, the Apostle Paul. Philippians 4, 10 through 13. Here's what the Apostle Paul said to the early church. He says, I rejoiced in the Lord greatly that now at length you have revived your concern for me. You were indeed concerned for me, but you had no opportunity. Now that I am speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. That last verse there is important. I can do all things through him, Jesus Christ, who strengthens me. This is like a verse that's often quoted out of context. You know, you'll slap it on a sports t-shirt, or someone will say it in regards to overcoming some big physical challenge. But I find it fascinating that when Paul uses it, he's actually talking about it in regard to contentment. He's saying Christ strengthens him and helps him go without. This isn't even actually a movement or a strengthening to something physically difficult to go against, or an active motion. This is actually the strength to do a passive motion of saying, no, I'm content. I don't need more stuff. I don't need more money. I don't need more. Christ strengthens me, that Jesus Christ in my heart is alone sufficient, that I'm content in that. And that's where the strength lies. He's not actually doing anything. He's actually choosing to not accept things. And this is amazing. So if we look at this, what's the secret? How do we let go? Jesus. Every time we go to that Amazon cart, every time we look at that bank balance, every time we go into that storage unit or that garage, we need to say, why am I holding on to this stuff? Why does it have to be so much value to me? Why is it so important? Why do I feel like it gives me some sort of status? Jesus, please help me let go. Help me walk away from all this stuff. It's enslaved me. It's become my master. It's a burden to me. My eyes are always focused on all this stuff. Help me be content. See, that's the strength. The position of strength is contentment. The ability to just say, Jesus, I only want you. I only need you right now. Don't listen to the world's lie that you are what you own. It doesn't define you. Jesus defines you. I love this quote in Daniel's book in this chapter. It's something you stumble into and grow in over time. When your focus shifts to Jesus, this is because contentment is a direction, not a destination. It's an outcome, not an action. It's something that comes out of a slow cooker, not from a microwave. You can't click to download it. There's no button. You can't choose it. as if it were some sort of one-off decision that you could make in isolation. You can't positively think your way to contentment either. No matter how many times you chant it, it's simply not something you can just, quote, add to your cart, unquote, or pull out of a vending machine. So stop believing the lies. Self-help is not the answer to contentment. More or less stuff isn't the path to contentment either. If it were, then both the wealthy and the minimalists would have claimed success by now. But they haven't, because contentment doesn't work that way. The only path to contentment is through Jesus, since Jesus has already given and promised us everything we need, even though there's nothing we've done or can ever do to deserve it. Jesus offers us this contentment. He offers us a contentment in life as a whole, not just about our money and stuff. God loved you so much that he sent his son to die for you, to take away the sin, the struggle, the lies, the heaping up of treasures for yourself. Jesus paid for it all at the cross. He died and was buried, but rose 3 days later and conquered sin and death. An empty cross and an empty tomb stating to the world, you are free from bondage. Treasure does not have to be your master. Your possessions do not have to be your master. Money does not have to be your master. Today, you can give it all to Jesus, submit to him, and finally find contentment, find freedom. If you'd like that, pray with me now. Dear Father, I thank you for sending your son Jesus to die for me. I submit to you that money and possessions are far too important. Help me let go. Whatever situation I'm in, of all those different situations that Canadians have where we store up stuff, help me let it all go. Help me center on you, Jesus. If someone doesn't know you, I pray that they would give their lives to you now, that they might trust in you. Give us contentment. Today, may we look at our storage spaces. Help us go into the garage, the attic, the basement, the self-storage facility, wherever we have. Help us go into it and just look at it through the lens of you. And help us ask, am I treasuring this? Am I storing this up on earth? Does it have any value in the kingdom? Help us get rid of anything that's blocking that. Help us embrace a heavenly kingdom mindset, not an earthly kingdom mindset. Father, may we be generous with our money. May we be generous with our stuff. May we not look at everything like how much value it is or how much it cost us financially. In this process of contentment, in laying down and getting rid of our earthly treasure, may we give it away freely, generously to those in need. We thank you for blessing our church, Lord. We thank you for those that are listening now and who continue to give, to build kingdom impact through our church, through Mountain View, through the city of Whitehorse, the Yukon, and beyond. We thank you for the gifts that you've given us, and we freely give back to you. Today, Father, we yearn for contentment that only your Son can provide at the cross. We thank you in Jesus' name, amen. 2 questions before we go for you to reflect on or talk about in your church at home group, talk about in the building, social distance groups, please. And here we go. Question number 1. What do I own that I have not used in 2020? Will I definitely, not maybe, will I definitely use it in 2021? Why can't I part with it? Isn't this tough? Okay, what do I own that I haven't used in 2020? Will I use it in 2021? Why can't I part with it? Talk about it. Let's get honest. Second question, how content am I? Is my lack of contentment related to money, stuff, or something deeper? How content am I? Is my lack of contentment related to money, stuff, possessions, my earthly treasures, or is there something deeper going on? Go ahead and reflect on that, discuss it, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much.